All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Jaden Armont. I'm here with my boy Anthony. Anthony, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. We are your undrafted rookie free agents, and today we're going to be talking about the Miami Heat and things going on around the NBA, WNBA, and NFL world today. So let's just get right into it.
Yup. Jumping straight into things with the Heat. As usual, Damian Lillard stays on everybody's mind, right? And as we're approaching training camp, things are starting to pick up in discussions, it seems like, but not just with the Heat. Also, the Raptors and Bulls have been reported to be showing some interest in Lillard. How do you think he would fit in those organizations if he did decide to open up his willingness to play with other teams? And I mean, what would their package look like?
For the Raptors, I mean you'd have to imagine they send Pascal Siakam, even though he's not a guard like Damian Lillard. They have to get like a significant player for him. Um, so him maybe package Gary Trent Jr. and a few picks, maybe throwing Scotty Barnes. So that's what I think Toronto's would look like. Chicago, I mean, shoot, they'd have to give up. You'd think Zach Levine probably and DeMar DeRozan, which sounds crazy, but again, it's Damian Lillard, and you see the way that Portland. You see the amount they want for him from the Heat, so you'd imagine that they'd want a significant amount from any other team. So having both of them is not out of the picture. Now, would Chicago agree on that? Probably not, but that's probably what Portland would ask for.
Absolutely. And I really don't think it makes any sense for either of those teams to go after Lillard. I mean, look at a team like Toronto all offseason. They've been talking about trading Siakam as is and, starting kind of fresh start with Scotty Barnes as your main guy. So I don't really think it makes much sense to bring in a aging guy like Lillard to make one final playoff push. And
Right.
then as far as Chicago goes, I mean, if you have to give up DeMar DeRozan and Zach Levine, what's the point in making the trade in the first place? You're going to
Right.
be stuck over there with Lillard and Vucevic as your top two guys, and that obviously that's not going to work out.
Right, definitely. But to the point of other teams getting involved, like I just feel like this was inevitable just because the Heat are taking so long to get him. Like you'd have to think other teams are like, all right, well, if they can't get him, let me throw my hat into the ring and try and, put a trade package together to see if I can, get Lillard.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, one final team that has maybe not reported interest, but I think it was Sports Illustrated's Chris Mannix was talking about potentially if the Oklahoma City Thunder are playing well this season and Lillard isn't traded before the season starts, I think he said he could see them making a real push for Lillard. Is that something you foresee?
I think the Thunder, I think where they're at right now with all their picks and the way they've developed players like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and Josh Giddey, I think they're on the right track. I don't think they need to trade for a big player like Lillard. But then again, maybe that's the benefit of having so many picks and so many young players, that you can be able to push for a big superstar. So that wouldn't be ideal in my opinion, but I could see it happening.
Yeah, I think even in two years' time, they could go out and make a push for Giannis if he decides he wants out of Milwaukee.
Right. Right. I remember you talking about that a couple episodes earlier.
Yeah. And following up with these other teams showing interest in Lillard, earlier today it was reported that the offers Portland's front office is receiving from these other teams, and maybe it's not Toronto or Chicago, but a team like the Knicks or the Magic, whoever it may be. Apparently, these offers are even worse than the Heat's offer, which I think is a little disrespectful to Lillard's value, but. I mean, what do you foresee the Heat giving up?
I mean, you'd have to think they trade Hero to a third team. They get I'd say like maybe two first round picks and maybe like a role player, and they take that package and put together Caleb Martin, Kyle Lowry, and probably a couple more other draft picks. And then
Mhm.
obviously either Jaime Jaquez or Nikola Jovic.
Mhm. those two, I think one of them's going to have to be involved at minimum, but I'm sure the Blazers are going to try and squeeze both of them out of the
Right.
Heat. And jumping forward, Brian Windhurst earlier this week, I believe, was talking about the Blazers, like I was saying, trying to squeeze every last asset out of Miami. And from Miami's perspective, if you want to go out and get Lillard, that's totally understandable because you want to form that big three with Lillard, Butler, and Adebayo. But at what cost is it worth giving up?
Right. I completely agree with you. And it's the fact that they did make the finals. So it's like you're taking, I mean, obviously, players like Duncan Robinson and Kyle Lowry didn't get you to the finals, but they contributed. And so if you're giving up so much that you take away the pieces that got you there, it's kind of like what's the point of the trade?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Miami's always thrived off of those deep teams, and by acquiring Lillard, like Brian Windhurst was saying, it might be a point where it's not worth it, and then you put Portland in a really tough spot where you have a guy that wants to go to the Heat, but at the same time, the Heat don't want him at the point of the Blazers' asking price.
Right. No, I completely agree.
Mm-hmm. And now jumping around the rest of the league, it's the dust has kind of settled in this situation now, but Kevin Porter Jr., there's been a lot of controversy around him the last week or two. I wouldn't expect to see him in the NBA ever again, but what's your take on the situation?
No, I mean, like you said, the NBA is much more strict than the NFL in terms of their suspension and player punishment. So I would not be surprised if we don't hear, a lot from him. But Miles Bridges was recently seen in a Hornets jersey, so you never know what can happen.
Yeah, and I saw one thing going around of the idea of another team, excuse me, trading for Kevin Porter Jr. And even if they have no plans to keep him on the roster, it's that media attention that you're bringing to your organization. That's just going to be such a negative impact that I think it's going to get to a point where they're just forced to cut him.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I just don't see what team would trade for him.
Yeah, no team wants that in their locker room, wants that as part of their
Right.
organization.
Right. And as much as crazy as it is to say, if this were, a budding superstar, maybe, but not a young guy who hasn't really proved a ton in the NBA yet.
Hmm. And transitioning over to the WNBA, the semifinals are coming up. So just doing a little preview on those. We have the Wings versus the Aces and the Liberty versus the Suns. What do you expect to come of those matchups? Who are you taking?
So right now I have the Aces and the Liberty. That's kind of the matchup that everyone was anticipating all year. Um, Aces Wings, I like Arike Ngubawale. I like Satel. Um, I never know how to pronounce her last name. Sabali or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Um, I think they're good, just not good enough. You got Asia Wilson, who's unstoppable. Then you have Kelsey Plume, you have Chelsea Gray, you have Jackie Young, who are all all-star caliber players. So I think that's pretty. I think that's going to swing in Las Vegas's favor very easily. Sun and Liberty, that's actually a decent matchup. I'm still going to lean towards New York. Just because Brianna Stewart is, in my opinion, the MVP this season. And then Jonquel Jones has played better. Then you got the Nigel Laney, Sabrina Ionescu, if she can be consistent, that'll be really good. And then Courtney Vandersloot, if she can continue to be a facilitator and then contribute, 13, 14 points a game, I think, they'll come out on top.
Mm-hmm. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was Sabrina a few days ago took a shot at, some of the other New York basketball teams. She said something like, "This is the best New York basketball in a long time," I believe.
Right.
I think that's a little disrespectful to last year.
Right. I mean, she kind of has a point, like in terms of this year, but historically, absolutely
Oh
not.
yeah,
It's
absolutely not.
easily the Knicks.
Hmm.
But yeah,
And then, finally moving out of the NBA over to the NFL, the Miami Dolphins took home the win in week 2 over the Patriots, went into Gillette Stadium, got the win 24-17. What are a few takeaways you have from that game?
Yeah, well, first I gotta mention they took a win over your Patriots, so I gotta I gotta rub that in your face a little bit. Um, yeah, didn't look as explosive as they did week 1, but they're facing a harder defense, so I anticipated it was going to be a little bit of a lower scoring game. Raheem Mostert looked pretty good. Tyreek didn't look as good, but again, they're facing a more difficult secondary. They're not playing, J.C. Jackson. Um, so yeah, I mean, Tua still looks good. Other than that underthrow on Tyreek Hill that led to an interception, I still believe as of right now he's probably a top 2 quarterback in the league. Because Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow still don't look that great. Um, so yeah, I have very high expectations for Miami. If Tua can stay healthy, if they can stay consistent, because I remember last year they won 3 games, then lost 3 games. They won 5 games, they lost 5 games, and like that's just like very streaky. So yeah, if they can maintain that, I have them coming out of the AFC East as on top.
Yeah, and touching on that last point about last season, their streakiness, I mean, most of that had to do with Tua's health and all the concussions he went through.
Right.
And I mean, everybody's seen that play in preseason where he kind of fell back like on his back instead of his head. So hopefully that's something he's been working on a lot this offseason to prevent those injuries.
Right.
Taking a little more in-depth look at the box score, you were saying Raheem Mostert had a nice game, 18 carries, 121 yards for 2 touchdowns. And I think that's something that we didn't see as much with the Dolphins last year. They were super reliant on Hill and Waddle to go out there and get 250 plus yards a game between the two of them. And now they're a little more lenient on the run game.
Right. And I think that's definitely going to help them. It's going to alleviate some pressure off Tua. So I like seeing them incorporate the run game a little bit more.
And then, I got to talk about my Patriots for a second. Mac Jones, man. I mean, week 1 against the Eagles, he came out and he looked like a different quarterback. I thought he played very well in week 1 for his standards. And then, he comes out in week 2 and he's just not making the right plays sometimes. He's looking over the middle, he's forcing things on 3rd down. I really think the Patriots have a very good defensive unit and it's just let down by the offense.
No, I completely agree. As a Steelers fan, I can completely relate to having like a heavily defensive team with a terrible offense. Um, and Mac Jones, I really thought after week 1, I'm like, okay, well, here he comes. Maybe, he'll redeem himself after last season, but we're just gonna have to see.
Yeah, and I think the Dolphins will come out of the AFC East, like you were saying, especially after Rodgers goes down. I was pretty high on the Jets with Rodgers, but Zach Wilson under center isn't exactly the best look.
Right. Um, what do you think about the Bills though? You think I have them in the mix with the Dolphins, but like
Mhm.
I just can't trust Josh Allen that much.
Well, I'm curious. When you said Tua looks like the second best quarterback in the NFL right now, who's your number one?
Um, I have to take a look at my QB ratings. Probably like I know this is crazy to say, but maybe like Justin Herbert. Just because like as of right now, I can't put Patrick Mahomes, I can't put Joe Burrow. Lamar Jackson looked better this week than he did after week 1. But yeah. So yeah, I'd probably put to a 1 or 2. Probably 1 over Herbert.
Yeah, but jumping back to your question to me about the Bills, I agree. I think they're going to be right there with the Dolphins. I mean, it's going to be a toss up. It's really going to come down to those divisional matchups and who can come out of there with those. And, you have 2 quarterbacks that are essentially exact opposites. You got Tua on one hand, who's known for his accuracy and his underthrowing. And then you got Josh Allen, who's got maybe the best arm in the league and tends to overthrow guys for interceptions.
Right. Or just make like careless turnovers.
Absolutely. I'm not sure what weeks they play, but those matchups will end up determining that division.
Definitely. I would agree with you.
Mhm. Well, that wraps up episode 2, unless you have anything else to say here.
No, that's it for me.
All
Thank you
right.
guys for tuning in. Again, my name is Jay Narmont. I'm here with Anthony Pasquiola.
Passiola.
Pasquiola. All right, I'm gonna get it one day. All right.